catastrophe.
World War II was a conflict plagued by violent combat, powerful weaponry, and an innumerable amount of death and unprecedented destruction. But beyond the pitched battles, the governments involved planned clandestine operations that, if executed, could have radically changed the course of history. One of the most fascinating and often forgotten was the United Kingdom's conspiracy to assassinate none other than Adolf Hitler. A risky plan, developed in the dark corners of military intelligence, where espionage, war tactics, and bold British determination intertwined in a unique way with the aim of ending the life of the leader of Nazism. In this military history video, we will explore the secrets of a mission that remained hidden for decades, where snipers and a mysterious intelligence network joined forces to carry out a dangerous attack on the heart of the Third Reich. Let's get started.
Au moment où sa cible approcherait tranquillement sur son chemin, l'agent anglais aurait suffisamment de temps pour ajuster son tir, ouvrir le feu et supprimer Adolf Hitler.
By 1943, the war had reached levels of destruction never seen before, and with the Axis forces still firmly in place, the Allies began to consider unconventional alternatives. The face of the war, without a doubt, was Adolf Hitler, the Führer of Nazi Germany, whose decisions not only guided his army, but also instilled terror and hatred in Europe and around the world. Within Allied circles, Hitler's death represented a way to end the war more quickly, and the fall of the pillar that supported the Nazi regime. Thus was born the ambitious plan to assassinate the German leader. However, the idea of eliminating him was not new. Since the outbreak of the war, several schemes had been drawn up, but none had reached an advanced stage of planning like this one. In 1943, the Special Operations Executive, a special British intelligence unit, gave the green light to design an operation that sought to end the life of the dictator. This plan, however, faced a number of virtually insurmountable obstacles. Not only was it necessary to circumvent the vast German security machinery, but Hitler's unpredictability, his constant changing of itineraries, his paranoia, and the fanaticism of those around him meant that each phase required surgical precision. To understand the true scope of this operation, it is necessary to break down the details behind its conception, the forces charged with carrying it out, and the reasons why its execution was so complex to carry out.
Pour assassiner Hitler, les agents du SOE décident donc de focaliser leur enquête sur la Bavière, dans le sud de l'Allemagne. Plus précisément, sur la montagne de l'Obersalzberg. Hitler y avait fait construire sa maison, le Berghof, dans laquelle il venait régulièrement passer du temps avec sa maîtresse, Eva Braun. La zone avait été transformée à partir des années 30 en gigantesque complexe archi-sécurisé.
The Special Operations Unit was a secret organization created on July 22, 1940 by the British government with the mission of carrying out clandestine operations in enemy territory. Its unofficial motto, "Set Europe on Fire," revealed its true intentions: to destabilize Nazism from within, using unconventional methods such as sabotage, espionage, subversion, and, in extreme cases, assassination. By late 1942 and early 1943, the war seemed to be taking a favorable course for the Allies, but the figure of the Führer held the German regime together. With the aim of accelerating the end of the war, the special unit of the United Kingdom began planning the assassination of Hitler. The plan was codenamed Operation Foxley and was entrusted to a small team whose job was to plan covert missions. One of the greatest challenges that British strategists faced was the unbreakable security surrounding the Nazi leader. The Führer was not only protected by a contingent of elite soldiers, but also lived in a constant state of paranoia, changing locations erratically and rarely announcing his movements in advance.
Le SOE se concentre alors sur ce qui semble être le seul point faible d'Hitler, le moment où il baisse totalement sa garde, sa promenade matinale entre son Berghof et la petite maison de thé située à quelques centaines de mètres en contrebas. Selon les sources locales du SOE, cette balade champêtre est quasiment devenue un rituel pour le dictateur.
Depuis le milieu du mois de mars 1944, date avant laquelle la neige était trop épaisse, Hitler s'est rendu presque tous les jours à la maison de thé.
He often resided in the Wolfschanze, or Wolf's Lair, a camouflaged fortress located in the thick forests of East Prussia, in present-day Poland. This complex was designed to withstand bombing and ground assaults, with underground bunkers and a security system that included mines, electrified fences, and multiple checkpoints. In addition, the perimeter was constantly patrolled by the SS, Hitler's personal guard, men fanatic and loyal to the regime. The DOE team knew that a direct raid would be suicide. A frontal attack was out of the question. The only viable option was to infiltrate and get close enough to carry out a precise strike. To do so, they first had to figure out the logistics. Where and when could they get close enough to Hitler? This was where the real spy work began. The British first step was to obtain precise information about the German leader's movements and daily routine. The Führer had an irregular schedule, and his public appearances were always monitored and protected. However, after months of intelligence gathering, the team identified several vulnerable points that, if exploited properly, could give them an opportunity. Hitler often took long walks around the perimeter of the complex, and at these times, although he was still under surveillance, he was less protected than when he met with his generals or during public appearances. At this point in the story, it is key to introduce the figure of an informant under the pseudonym of Thornless. This German prisoner of war who deserted from the front offered his collaboration to the British, providing crucial information about Hitler's routine and his security in the Eagle's Nest.
Il est nécessaire de rassembler le plus vite possible tous les renseignements disponibles sur les endroits clés, ses mouvements, son entourage proche, etc.
Malgré les réticences du lieutenant-colonel Thornley, l'enquête préalable au projet d'assassinat d'Adolf Hitler est confiée à un agent du SOE. Son nom de code, LBX.
The information gathered by the spies led the British agents to consider several ways to end Hitler's life: a sniper hiding in the woods, an attack with explosives, or even poisoning his food or drink. Of all the options, assassination by long-range weapons seemed the most feasible. However, another problem arose here: getting close enough to the Wolfschanze without arousing suspicion. The final plan drawn up by the special unit was as bold as it was risky. It consisted of infiltrating a small team of British operatives near these gardens. Once inside the perimeter, they would camouflage themselves among the dense vegetation surrounding the complex, and, using long-range rifles, would wait for the moment when Hitler took his morning walk to shoot him from a safe distance. To carry out this operation, the unit trained a select group of soldiers who were experienced in infiltration missions and hand-to-hand combat. Among them was a sniper who had demonstrated lethal accuracy on the battlefield. This man would be in charge of taking the shot, in the hope that a single accurate shot would be enough to end the Nazi leader's life. The plan also included an escape route. They knew that if they managed to eliminate Hitler, German security would react immediately, deploying all available forces to capture them. Thus, several exit routes were designed through the woods surrounding the gardens, with hidden resupply points where agents could change clothes, destroy any compromising equipment, and blend in with the locals.
La première question à laquelle doit répondre LBX est le choix du lieu où programmer la mission. Car entre ses visites aux quatre coins de l'Europe, ses interventions publiques ou ses séjours dans ses différents QG en Allemagne, Hitler est en perpétuel mouvement. Surtout, il est connu pour être quasiment intouchable.
Je pense qu'il y a différentes choses qui expliquent pourquoi il paraissait impossible de tuer Hitler. D'abord, il y a son agenda et ses réactions qui étaient totalement imprévisibles.
As we can see, despite meticulous planning, the British team was faced with an inescapable reality. The level of difficulty of the operation was extreme. The Wolfschanze was so well protected that even if they managed to infiltrate, the chances of success were minimal. In addition, the weather conditions in that region were unpredictable, which further complicated the accuracy of a sniper's shot. Humidity, fog, and snow could severely affect visibility. Another obstacle that played against them was Hitler's erratic nature. Although the British team had observed a consistent routine on their morning walks, there was no guarantee that on the day of the operation, everything would remain the same. The Führer, known for his unpredictability, could change his plans at the last moment, completely ruining the British effort. As we already mentioned, his severe paranoia often led him to take drastic measures to prevent anyone from predicting his movements. To add further complication, the British government itself was not entirely convinced that assassinating Hitler was the best option. Winston Churchill, then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, despite supporting the plan from the beginning, began to doubt its long-term benefits.
La position précise de Churchill sur ce projet d'attentat n'est pas dévoilée dans les échanges de télégrammes. Mais ce qui est certain, c'est que le Premier ministre anglais a accepté de laisser ses agents travailler sur la question.
Churchill était surtout intéressé par la stratégie, la tactique et le côté militaire. Il pensait et savait par expérience que l'on gagne une guerre sur le champ de bataille.
The question that pervaded the thoughts of the alliance's top brass was, if Adolf Hitler were to die, who would replace him? Some within the British top brass feared that his death might strengthen the German military, removing the Führer's erratic leadership and placing a more rational and competent military man in power. With the dictator out of the way, the regime could be reorganized under the leadership of more competent generals, such as Erwin Rommel or Heinz Guderian, thereby prolonging the war. One of the main obstacles was the fear of unexpected consequences. By mid-1944, when the operation was in its final phase of preparation, Allied forces were making significant advances in Europe. The Normandy landings of June 6th of that year had been a resounding success, and the British, American, and Soviet armies were advancing rapidly towards the heart of the Third Reich. Against this backdrop, some senior Allied commanders began to wonder whether removing Hitler, rather than hastening the end of the war, might actually complicate matters. The reasoning was simple. Despite his relentless leadership, the Führer had proven to be an ineffective military commander on many occasions. His erratic decision-making, driven by his ego and distorted view of reality, had led the Wehrmacht to make serious strategic mistakes. Winston Churchill himself began to consider that eliminating him might end up benefiting Germany. In addition, the growing instability in the Nazi power circle itself added another layer of uncertainty. By 1944, Hitler had become more isolated and paranoid, relying increasingly on his intuition and a small group of loyalists.
Après ça, il y a eu la création d'un autre corps d'élite, les SS, pour Schutzstaffel, qui signifie escadron de protection en allemand. On sait d'ailleurs que c'est devenu par la suite un État dans l'État. Et parmi eux, il y avait un petit groupe de soldats affectés spécialement à Hitler. Ils étaient ses gardes du corps personnel. Quel que soit l'endroit où il se rendait, c'était inspecté en avance. Quand il arrivait, il y avait des gens postés partout pour s'assurer qu'il n'y ait pas de sniper ou qu'il n'y ait pas de bombe placée quelque part.
Dissent within the German High Command had begun to manifest itself. On July 20th, 1944, a coup attempt was made, with the failed plot popularly known as Operation Valkyrie, led by Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg. The internal German resistance did not achieve its objective, but it had made it clear that there were factions within the Third Reich willing to act against Hitler. Indeed, his survival after that attempt was seen by some Allied strategists as an advantage. A weakened and paranoid Führer might be easier to defeat than a unified regime under a more rational leader. Another alternative that the British considered was a bombing that would end his life. But was it really possible to assassinate a leader as powerful as Hitler in this way?
L'idée de bombarder l'Obersalzberg pour tuer Hitler n'aurait été que pure folie. Déjà parce que vous aviez cet immense réseau souterrain de bunkers et d'abris anti-bombes. Il y avait là littéralement toute une ville. Et il y avait aussi des alarmes anti-aériennes qui auraient été déclenchées largement avant que les avions n'arrivent. Donc vous imaginez bien, tout le monde se serait abrité. Cette idée de tuer Hitler en bombardant le Berghof était juste impossible.
The security surrounding Hitler was formidable. As the details of the plan unfolded, the British military brass realized that even if they managed to infiltrate their soldiers into the compound, the chances of success were still slim. The operation required precision that was almost impossible to guarantee, amidst the unpredictable weather conditions and Hitler's own unpredictable schedule changes. Any small mistake could cause the mission to fail, and the agents involved to be captured or killed. Nevertheless, the planning had to continue. If they succeeded in achieving their objective, they would go down in history.
Le plan consistait donc à faire passer le sniper pour un soldat allemand. L'agent infiltré devait donc être habillé en uniforme de type Gebirgsjäger. Cette tenue, réservée aux troupes de montagne, équipait tous les soldats de l'Obersalzberg, y compris les SS et la RSD, la garde personnelle du Führer.
As Allied troops advanced into Germany from the west and the Red Army pushed from the east, the end of the Third Reich loomed on the horizon. British and American forces understood that they did not need to risk executing such a dangerous operation when the war was entering its final phase. Despite all the meticulous planning, months of preparation, and enormous amounts of resources devoted to Operation Foxley, the plan to assassinate Hitler was never executed. The reasons behind this decision were manifold and largely reflected the deep doubts that persisted within British command circles about the appropriateness and feasibility of such a mission. Operation Foxley was shelved, its documents classified and locked away in British government archives for decades. It was not until much later, when the documents were declassified in 1998, that the public learned just how close Hitler came to being killed by Allied forces. While many today wonder what would have happened if the plan had been carried out, the consensus among historians is that the Führer's death in 1944 would not have radically changed the course of the war. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler, in an act of desperation, committed suicide in his bunker in Berlin, with Soviet troops just a few blocks from his position. Ironically, the English sniper's hands switched with those of the German leader, but the bullet found its target.
L'arme sélectionnée pour assassiner Hitler devait donc forcément faire partie des équipements de l'armée allemande. Le choix se porta sur un fusil de tireur d'élite de type Mauser, doté d'une lunette de visée télescopique. L'agent serait aussi équipé de grenades à main pour se défendre en cas de fuite. Une fois sur place, le parcours emprunté par le sniper avait été soigneusement préparé par les agents du SOE.
Operation Foxley has become a fascinating alternative history within the events of World War II. While it was a bold and detailed plan, fraught with risk and complexity, doubts about its effectiveness and the potential consequences of Hitler's death meant that, in the end, the mission was never carried out. Today, Operation Foxley is remembered not only as a story of espionage and bravery, but as a reminder of the complications inherent in plans that seek to change history through individual acts. Ultimately, the fate of the Third Reich was sealed by the combined effort of millions of soldiers, civilians, and agents fighting on all fronts, and not by the shot of a sniper in the forests of Poland. However, the fact that the British had seriously considered this plan underscores the level of desperation that characterized the fight against Nazism. We have thus come to the end of this military history video, but first we want to ask you, what do you think would have happened if the British plan to assassinate Adolf Hitler had succeeded? Leave us your answer in the comments box below, and don't forget to subscribe to learn about many more military events from World War II. See you next time.